I was in the break room at Kenwick Auto, still in my oil-stained coveralls, when Brent Colson told me my dad dying wasn't his problem. He didn't even flinch when I told him, just kept scrolling on his tablet like I was asking to leave early for a dentist appointment. "Find someone to cover or clean out your locker," he muttered. That was it. I stood there for a second, waiting for him to look up. He didn't. I'd been working that garage bay for nearly 4 years. Picked up every holiday, every weekend shift, never once called out. Covered for guys hungover, guys late, guys who bailed mid-shift. Now I was asking for one damn week. Not a vacation, not a beach trip, just time to say goodbye before my dad slipped away on a ventilator. Brent acted like I'd asked for a raise. My throat burned, but I didn't say a word. Didn't trust myself to open my mouth. My hands clenched hard enough that grease smeared down my palms. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and old brake fluid. Somebody had left a half-eaten sandwich on the counter. I walked out without touching it. Brent yelled after me before I even hit the door. "You walking out? You know what week it is? Inventory starts Friday, Gardner. You bail now, don't come back." I didn't answer. I just kept moving, past the bays, past the front desk. The cold air outside hit my face like a slap. That night, I was sitting beside my old man in a hospital room, gripping his hand like it was the only thing holding me together. Machines beeped steady around us. Tubes snaked out from under his blanket. His face looked thin, too pale. He didn't talk, didn't open his eyes, just breathed, barely, while the nurse adjusted his oxygen and whispered something kind I didn't hear. This was the same man who raised me solo, who worked every sketchy back-office accounting gig he could find just to make rent. He used to run numbers for defense contractors, work that always looked routine on paper, but he kept it quiet, like there was more to it than I ever realized. Spent more time helping me with algebra than worrying about himself. And now he was slipping away. And my boss acted like it was a missed oil change. Quick note: before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I stared at the monitors, tried to memorize the sounds, tried not to picture him gone, thought about how I was supposed to go back to Kenwick, smile for customers, rotate tires, and pretend my world wasn't burning down. Screw Brent. I didn't quit that night. I just made a choice. I chose my father. He died that Tuesday morning. Nurse said it was peaceful, said his breathing just slowed down and stopped. But I felt it like a steel beam through the chest. No big drama, no last words, just a machine going quiet, and a body that suddenly felt too still. I sat there after the nurse walked out, hands still wrapped around his. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but eventually someone tapped on the door and gave me that gentle look that said, "You have to let go now." So I did. I stood up, I walked out. And I didn't look back. Nobody else was going to handle anything, so it all fell on me. No siblings, no savings, no instructions, no will. I was making $17.25 an hour, barely keeping my truck running, and now I was supposed to plan a funeral. I maxed out every card I had, picked the cheapest casket, skipped the flowers, did the service at a small chapel that shared space with a dental office. The funeral home guy kept pushing me to upgrade to the honor package, and I nearly punched him in the mouth. "Was he military?" he asked. "No, just a single dad who worked himself to death." He shut up after that. A few of Dad's old co-workers came, all dressed like they still worked in office parks from the early 2000s. Some neighbors showed up too, mostly older folks, ones who remembered him fixing their taxes or helping with paperwork when their kids got arrested or divorced. There was this one retired guy who stood next to me after the service and said, "Your dad and I did internal audits together, government contractor stuff, nothing exciting." Then he smiled, but not a happy kind of smile, more like you'll understand later. He handed me a business card with no job title on it and walked away. But what really got me were the 3 men in dark suits standing in the back. They didn't speak to anyone, didn't bow their heads, didn't cry, just stood there, hands clasped in front of them, watching. After it ended, I walked straight up to them. I didn't care if I was still wearing my scuffed-up boots and borrowed blazer that didn't fit right. I was pissed, and I wanted to know who the hell they were. "Did you know my father?" I asked. The one in the middle nodded once. Sharp haircut, no smile. "We're sorry for your loss." The other 2 turned and left without another word. I stood there watching them walk out the door. "Hey," I called after, "you can at least say why you're here." But they were already gone. I looked down at the guy who spoke. But he was already reaching into his coat, handing me a plain white envelope. No markings, no return address. He gave it to me, gave a slight nod, and followed the others out. I opened it right there on the sidewalk. Nothing inside but a card that read, "If he left you anything, protect it." That was it. No signature, no explanation, just those 7 words. I shoved it into my coat pocket and stood there, while the wind kicked up dust from the parking lot. The sky had gone gray, the kind of overcast that doesn't cry, just sits heavy on your shoulders. People kept walking up to shake my hand, offer condolences. I barely heard them. My mind was stuck on that card, the way those men had just watched everything, the weird silence, the envelope, all of it. I didn't know it yet, but they weren't there to mourn. They were there to make sure whatever my dad left behind didn't fall into the wrong hands. Too bad for them. It already had. Monday came, and I walked back into Kenwick like nothing happened, like I hadn't just buried the only person who ever gave a damn about me. The second I punched in, Brent gave me that smug, tight-lipped grin he did when he thought he had the upper hand. "Glad to see you're back," he said. "Wasn't sure if we'd have to start cleaning out your bay." I didn't answer, just grabbed the clipboard off the wall and went to work, half dead inside, hands moving out of muscle memory, rotate, inspect, replace, repeat. I kept my head down and didn't say a word. Nobody else said much either. The rest of the crew knew Brent well enough not to cross him, and they knew grief when they saw it. A few gave me a nod, but that was it. No hugs, no "sorry for your loss." Just the sound of impact wrenches and the hiss of air compressors filling the silence. Then, just before lunch, this man walks in. Black suit, dark tie, coat still buttoned. Not a customer, not a parts supplier. This guy moved like he didn't need permission to be anywhere. He stepped right into the middle of the garage, didn't flinch at the noise or the smell, looked around once, then locked eyes with me. "Mr. Gardner," he said, voice sharp, no hesitation. "I'm Director Hale, U.S., Treasury, Fraud Division. We need to talk." Brent was there in seconds, fake smile already glued to his face. "Dale's been going through some stuff. He's not himself right now." Hale didn't even look at him. "Actually," he said, calm as hell, "he might be the only one here who was himself." That shut Brent up. For once. Hale nodded toward the parking lot. I followed him out without saying a word. We got into a sleek black sedan parked right up front, the kind of car that looked out of place in a mechanic's lot. Inside, he handed me a file folder. My dad's name was printed across the top. "Your father worked for us," Hale said. "Not officially. Contract basis. Quiet work. We used him when we needed someone who could find the dirt without making noise." I flipped through the papers. Invoices, time logs, some internal memos, all connected to something called Kenwick Automotive Holdings. "He was our best," Hale continued. "Started investigating Kenwick's parent company 3 years ago. Found patterns no one else caught. But he didn't trust our system. Said the evidence would vanish if it got passed up the wrong chain. So he encrypted it all," I said, barely above a whisper. Hale nodded. "Bank accounts, shell companies, shadow payrolls. Everything tied together, but without the keys, it's useless. We know he hid them somewhere." I stared out the window. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. My dad, the man who reused coffee filters and wore the same flannel jacket for a decade, was building a case under our noses, against the company I was working for. "He never told me," I muttered. "He wasn't supposed to," Hale said, "but we're out of options. If you come across anything, codes, drives, ledgers, you call me directly." He slid a card into my jacket pocket. "Don't talk to Brent. Don't talk to anyone here. We're watching the whole operation, and if they get wind we're this close, everything burns." I nodded once. No promises, just acknowledgement. As I stepped out of the car, I looked back at the garage. Brent was leaning against the office door, arms crossed, eyes squinting like he could read lips from 50 feet away. He looked nervous. Good. I drove straight from the shop to Dad's apartment. Didn't stop for food, didn't turn on the radio. My head was a mess and my chest felt like it was full of cement. Hale's words kept looping, encrypted, tied together, hidden. I let myself in with the spare key still under the busted porch light. Inside, Everything was just like he left it. Bills stacked neat on the counter. Dented coffee maker full of stale grounds. His old corduroy recliner facing the blank TV. I went straight to his desk. Pulled every drawer. Most were full of receipts, tax forms, faded Post-its with weird shorthand he used for years. But the bottom left drawer was locked. I hadn't even noticed before. I grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen, wedged it open. Inside were 2 USB drives and 3 spiral notebooks packed with handwritten number strings. Letters, symbols, charts. His handwriting was tight, like he was afraid to waste space. I didn't understand half of it, but it wasn't random. Then I spotted something I'd never seen before. Behind the bookcase, half hidden under a pile of old file folders, a small black safe. I stared at it for a full minute before I even touched it. No keyhole, just a keypad. I tried his birthday first. No luck, mine, nothing. Then I froze, hand hovering above the pad. Mom's birthday. Well, not her birthday exactly. The day she left. Dad never talked about her. Never called her a name, never badmouthed her. But I remember him marking that date every year by doing nothing. Not working, not talking. Just quiet. I typed it in. Month, day, year. The safe clicked. Inside was a manila envelope. No cash, no jewelry. Just a letter with my name on it and a folded printout with 6 long wallet keys. Each key had a company name next to it. And right there in bold, halfway down the list, Kenwick Automotive Holdings. The letter was short, 4 lines. If you're reading this, I didn't get to finish it. Do what I couldn't. Make them pay. Trust your instincts. I stayed up half the night combing through the notebooks. I had no idea how deep it went until I laid it all out on the living room floor. Parts that were never delivered, shifts that were clocked but never worked, cash routed through shell vendors. The totals added up to just over $52 million. My hands shook as I stared at it. It was real. It was all there. Years of quiet, methodical work. He was trying to burn the whole machine down, one ledger at a time. I could have called Hale that night. I had the goods, the keys, the logs, the evidence. But I didn't. Because Hale wanted justice, and I wanted revenge. The next morning at Kenwick, I walked in like nothing had changed. Brent didn't even look up. He was arguing with a parts guy over the phone, barking about a back order that didn't exist. I nodded to a few of the guys, got to my bay, and started paying real attention. I started collecting every little thing that didn't sit right. Pay stubs that didn't add up. Customer orders that never got fulfilled. Timesheets that magically stretched. I took photos. Wrote it all down. 3 weeks in, I had my own stack. Not just his old files, my own first-hand proof. Different handwriting, same blood. I didn't call Hale. Instead, I called Apex Garage Group, Kenwick's biggest competitor, the company Brent and the rest used to badmouth like it was sport. The receptionist tried to bounce me, said they don't take unscheduled vendor pitches. I said I wasn't selling brake pads. I had something worth $52 million. That got me transferred fast. 2 days later, I sat across from Claudia Wren, Apex's VP of Regional Strategy, in a windowless rental office off the 84. Cheap coffee, metal chairs, a whiteboard with no marker stains. She wore a navy pantsuit and zero makeup. No nonsense. "You've got 10 minutes, she said, flipping open a small notebook. I laid it out. Not all the raw data, just enough to prove I wasn't bluffing. Shell vendors, payroll fraud, ledger tampering across 3 divisions. I showed her copies of the wallet keys, scrubbed of identifiers but intact. One had the Kenwick Holdings address burned into the metadata. 52 million buys you exclusive rights, I told her. No leaks, no lawsuits. You get the package, you go public. Sink their stock, clean house. Your company becomes the White Knight. She didn't blink. Why that number? Because that's what they stole, I said. Justice comes at a cost. She leaned back, tapped her pen twice against her notepad. You a whistleblower or a mercenary? I'm both, I said, and I don't care what title you stick on the wire transfer. She smiled. Not warm, not cold, just business. We'll be in touch. A week later, I got a call. They were in. The money hit a blind trust the next morning. I had the login, I had the receipt. They had everything else: encrypted files, decoded summaries, timelines, vendor lists, every single piece of rot my dad uncovered, plus everything I'd added on top: photos, pay stubs, meeting schedules, internal memos, all indexed, all time-stamped. It was enough to gut Kenwick from the inside out. And now, their biggest rival held the blade. Brent didn't know. None of them did. At work, he was still pacing like a king, barking about oil filters and overtime. The regional boss popped in for surprise inspections. Guys were getting chewed out for minor screw-ups. You could feel it tightening, like the building knew something was coming. I kept my head down, said nothing, just smiled when Brent cracked his usual jokes. He still wore that Rolex, still left in a black Escalade he definitely couldn't afford before last quarter. He thought the game was rigged in his favor. He just didn't know someone changed the rules. I walked into Kenwick for my last shift, like it was just another Tuesday. Same creaky time clock. Same burnt coffee stench coming from the break room. Same grease stain on the carpet Brent said he'd replaced 3 years ago. I even said morning to Carl, like I gave a damn what was under the next hood. Brent was at the front counter counting petty cash like it was national security. He didn't even look up when he snapped, "Make sure Bay 3's cleared. We're double booked on tire rotations." I didn't say a word, just walked over, pulled the folded sheet of paper from my jacket, and dropped it right in front of him. The logo at the top said Apex Garage Group, bold, sharp, clean. He frowned and glanced down. "What's this?" "Purchase receipt," I said, leaning in just enough for only him to hear. "Investigative assets related to fraud at Kenwick Holdings." His face froze like a man who just realized the cliff edge he was dancing on wasn't there anymore. He looked up, mouth slightly open. "What the hell does that mean?" I kept my voice low and steady. "It means your biggest rival owns the proof, and they're handing it to the feds tomorrow." For a split second, I saw it. Real panic. The kind you can't fake. He tried to laugh it off, but his eyes were bouncing around, searching for a lifeline. "You think this is a joke?" he said. "You think a little paper trail scares me?" "I think 52 million in documented theft scares everybody," I said, "especially when it's tied to your name 6 different ways." He snatched the paper and stormed into his office, slammed the door so hard the parts catalog fell off the front desk. 10 minutes later, he was back out, yelling for everyone to get focused, like we were a bunch of rookies about to cost him a bonus. But I was already gone. I didn't clock out, didn't pack up my tools, just walked out the same door he once told me not to come back through. That afternoon, Apex dropped their press release, called themselves Whistleblower Partners, claimed their interest was industry accountability and ethical transparency. Yeah, sure, they wanted Kenwick gutted so they could pick the bones, and I gave them the carving knife. By evening, the DOJ was moving in. First it was the regional VP in Indiana, picked up at his lake house in handcuffs, then the CFO out in Phoenix. By nightfall, local news trucks were circling the Kenwick office downtown like vultures. And Brent? He made the mistake of going into work the next morning like nothing had happened, showed up in a polo shirt like it was just another team huddle. But the second he stepped out of his truck, 2 guys in navy jackets stepped up with badges. He didn't argue, didn't fight, just stood there while they read the charges and slapped the cuffs on. Payroll fraud, wire fraud, obstruction, conspiracy. He locked eyes with me on the way to the cruiser. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just stood there while he got driven away. The same man who once told me a deathbed didn't matter if I couldn't find coverage. Now I was the one who called the shots. The one with the plan. The one who flipped their whole world upside down. Quietly, completely, and without mercy. I didn't just sit on the money. I built something with it. 6 months after Brent got dragged out of that parking lot in cuffs, I opened the doors to the Arlo Dale Foundation for Blue Collar Justice. Named it after my dad, because no one ever gave him the thanks he deserved. We set up in a converted machine shop just outside Spokane. Concrete floors, steel beams, nothing fancy. But the wiring was solid, the Wi-Fi held up, and every desk in that place had a purpose. We weren't handing out free lunches. We were hunting predators. Legal aid for guys like me, mechanics, warehouse workers, truck drivers, forklift operators. Folks who got their hours shaved, overtime forgotten. Safety violations buried under cheap excuses. First person I hired was Charlie from Kenwick. He used to pull doubles while Brent took credit for the numbers. Now Charlie runs logistics, intake, scheduling, communication. No more yelling over busted radios. Then Rico, sharp with spreadsheets, never said much. Brent cut his hours for efficiency. Now Rico handles payroll audits for the whole damn foundation. He found 5 companies stealing wages in the first month alone. Tammy came next. She was the only one at Kenwick who stood up for me when I left. Brent docked her hours just for asking where I went. Now she runs our fraud tip line, knows every labor code like scripture. In year 1, we got over $4 million back into workers' hands. And we weren't quiet about it. We took down 5 mid-size employers, roofing companies, moving outfits, 2 auto chains, and 1 shady warehouse in Oregon that had guys working 12-hour shifts with no breaks and fake time cards. We worked with reporters, leaked documents, put pressure on the state labor board until they finally stopped shrugging us off. Whistleblowers came to us instead of lawyers. We offered protection and results, no red tape. When a guy from Tacoma handed us a USB full of altered contracts, we had it verified, traced, and submitted within 48 hours. The name Arlo Dale started to travel. We heard from shop managers who literally told their teams, "Don't screw around. If Arlo Dale hears about this, we're toast." I didn't smile when I heard that, but I did write it on the whiteboard in big black letters. I never told Brent what I did with the money, never wrote, never visited. But I made damn sure his cell block had a radio. And I made sure the news stations mentioned the foundation by name. He heard it, and he knew exactly who was behind it. Brent tried to play dumb in court, told the jury he was just following policy, that upper management created the system, and he was as shocked as anyone when things unraveled. But I had the emails. I had the spreadsheets with his initials next to inflated hours. The bonus memos. The internal training docs where he literally explained how to skim labor costs without triggering audits. I had a screenshot of him telling a new manager, "It's not theft if you know how to hide it." Didn't take the jury long. He got 9 years. Ordered to pay over $400,000 in restitution. His wife filed for divorce 2 months in. Their house got repoed. Truck 2. Retirement account. Frozen, drained, gone. And I sat in every session. Every pre-trial, every cross-exam, every sentencing date. Front row, not out of spite, just to remind him that I was real, that I was still watching. At one point, Brent's lawyer tried to get me barred from the courtroom, filed a motion claiming I was emotionally disruptive and haunting the defendant. The judge looked at me, then back at him, and said, "That's not a legal reason." Motion denied. Brent couldn't even look at me after that. But I wasn't done. Kenwick's collapse wasn't a local fire. It was a fuse that lit up the whole network. The foundation teamed up with the DOJ and some forensic auditors. We tracked funding pipelines, slush accounts, falsified compliance reports. Everything my dad hinted at in his notes. All of it real. We took down 18 more executives from the parent company. 3 served time, 7 paid fines in the millions. The rest signed settlements that kept the foundation funded for years. No more Apex money. We didn't need it. I got a letter from Brent about a year into his sentence. It came in a cheap envelope with my name scrawled on the front like an afterthought. Inside, he said what they all say when they're cornered. Bad childhood, too much pressure, trusted the wrong people. Said he never meant to hurt anyone. Said he hoped I could find peace. I didn't write back. I didn't burn it either. I stuck it in the bottom drawer of my desk, under a file of anonymous tips we hadn't cracked yet. Not out of forgiveness. Reminders are useful. 3 years in, the Arlo Dale Foundation had reclaimed over $40 million for workers across 9 states. Auto shops, warehouses, small construction crews, delivery routes. The places nobody ever looked twice at. Now, when employers heard our name, they didn't double down. They backed off. We had audit teams with waiting lists. Attorneys calling us for advice. Local news outlets fighting to be the first to break our next takedown. Apex Garage Group ended up funding almost 40% of our work. Not because they were sorry, they weren't. But it was cheaper to play hero than deal with lawsuits. And that was fine by me. I didn't need saints, I needed leverage. The same mechanic who once got threatened for needing time off to bury his father, that was me, now stood in union halls and shook hands with senators pushing bills to protect blue-collar labor. We launched free training workshops, not just know your rights stuff, but real-world tactics, how to read pay stubs, spot payroll skimming, document retaliation. One guy who took our class went back to his hotel job and blew the whistle on a trafficking and wage theft ring that stretched across state lines. We helped him. Then we shut that chain down. Another group came to us with records from a warehouse outside Reno. 700 workers, all underpaid, all lied to. We built the case, filed the class action, and won. I never stepped foot back into Kenwick Auto. Never needed to. But every time we shut down another crooked shop, I thought about Brent. His face, his voice, that smug smirk the day he told me to find coverage or don't come back. I came back, just not the way he expected. My dad never got to see what I built from the files he hid away in that safe. Never heard about the wins. Never met the people we helped. But his name is on every wall of every office, carved into plaques, printed on letterheads, painted above the reception desks, like a challenge. Arlo Dale Foundation, because he taught me the numbers never lie. And I made damn sure those numbers brought the whole system down.